don't know what deficiency I have. If anyone knows, email us at informedattraction@gmail.com, where occasionally I get the urge to just...
Aubrey soliciting medical advice on the internet.
It's either this or ChatGPT.
You're right.
Where I just get this urge to eat a raw onion like an apple.
Have you ever done it?
I have, when I've gotten that craving before.
What breed of onion are you chomping into?
It's like usually like a sweet onion, but on occasion it's been like a yellow onion.
Oh.
And it burns so good. I noticed I got that craving more when I was like working out a lot. So I wonder if it was like I was depleting something.
Are there a lot of electrolytes in onions? Is it like drinking a Gatorade?
No, it burns.
Well, okay, sure. Yeah, that doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot of electrolytes, Aubrey. So does if you put salt in your eyes, or if you're a slug, it burns.
But I'm not a slug.
You don't know that. Okay, a craving for onions can indicate a potential nutritional deficiency, particularly sulfur, vitamin C, B6, folate, potassium, antioxidants, fructose, or cellulose.
I mean, which one would I be low in if I just did like a big workout?
Craving an onion after a workout. I love the internet. Because someone else has Googled this before.
It's just going to be some Balkan guy who's like, oh yeah, I do this after every workout.
So it could be either the fact that they have the antioxidants, specifically quercetin, because you're gay. Because apparently that like is an anti-inflammatory compound that might be helping with muscle inflammation. Or I was fucking right, baby. And because it's rich in potassium, potassium is important for maintaining electrolyte balance. I work for science and I figured it out.
My mom's potassium deficient.
So when you like go get blood tests at the doctor and they suggest you go on Ozempic, have they also ever told you what vitamins you're deficient in? Like
really, they've never. I don't think I have any vitamin deficiencies.
I think that they tested my potassium levels too. I could look at my chart right now, but that's a lot of clicking.
I believe you.
Speaking of beliefs, welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast about how sometimes Mormonism is the right choice. Hosted by 2 Obie Awards. I'm Mackenna Goodrich.
I'm Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
And this week we will be concluding both our 2-parter on The Whale and also our 4-parter on Fat Suits, baby.
So I have some more notes on the movie, but I think I'd like to have you talk a little bit about the play and some of the major differences with the play and some of the reactions to it, and then we can probably fold in some of these other notes that I have throughout.
Great. So yeah, so this was a play first. Basically, so before this, Samuel Hunter had a play called The Bright New Boise, which is sort of like the first time people really started paying attention to him, and then The Whale was sort of how he like popped off. Looking in my notes for what year the play came out. Oopsies.
I think it's 2012.
2012. It premiered at the Denver Center for Performing Arts and then had its off-Broadway run here in New York at Playwrights Horizons. Aubrey, you'll remember that's where we saw Teeth. It's interesting. So I was reading this New York Times review about the play, and similarly to the way that a lot of people talk about the movie, is that it's this thing of like, they're being sort of empathetic to him. They call him like a gentle, suffering giant. This is a Charles Isherwood review. This is a true thing that he says. In this gentle, suffering giant, Mr. Hunter has created a distinctive and intriguingly complicated central character. It is rare enough to even see mildly overweight characters depicted in new plays. Never before have I encountered anyone resembling Charlie, portrayed with easygoing humanity and grace by Shuler Hensley, who is not fat, by the way. I think that's kind of important that Shuler Hensley is not a fat man. So it's a bit disappointing that the drama Mr. Hunter wraps around Charlie's ample frame strikes so many familiar notes about mending broken relationships. And while the play is adorned with allusions to Moby Dick and the biblical story of Jonah and the whale, these sometimes feel like forced attempts to add poetic fiber to the play's standard fabric. And then the sort of the last part of this review that I wanted to point to, although Mr. Hunter draws Charlie with subtlety and sensitivity, his writing grows far more shrill when it comes to the women in the orbit. He falls into the trap that often bedevils young playwrights, stretching for comic shocks at the expense of truthful portraiture. With a dark scowl and a monotone enameled in malice, Ellie is a glaring caricature of a troubled teenager, a misfit determined to outmean the mean girls. And then the next paragraph, he starts to talk about Liz. This is something that they cut from the movie, which I think was also a really good change. Would a woman who professes an abiding love for Charlie really refer to him as a fat, disgusting thing? In the play, Liz is like super fat phobic towards Charlie and like constantly is talking about his weight and dunking on him. And I think that was a really good change in the movie, that like Liz is not doing that in the movie. Actually, she's like never like, you fucking disgusting piece of shit to Charlie in the movie, which I really like. The biggest change in the whole movie is the plot about Elder Thomas. In the play, he is Elder Thomas, a young Mormon missionary who is on a mission. He's from Iowa on a mission in Idaho. And he knocks on Charlie. So all the like the main things are the same, like knocks on Charlie's door, sees him seeing gay porn, blah, 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 blah. The thing that Charlie asks Elder Thomas to help him with is Alan had not talked to his family in a long time. Alan went on a mission to Switzerland, came back, and was like, I'm not a part of the church anymore. Mm-hmm. And then he like doesn't talk to his family, and then his dad, who's a bishop for the Church of Latter-day Saints, shows up and is like, I wrote a sermon, it's specifically for you. Alan goes to church, Charlie does not go, and it's that day where Alan comes back a completely different person, gets into this whole cycle of not eating, and ends up killing himself. So what Charlie asks of Elder Thomas is, I need you to find out what was in that sermon. Someone around town has to know what was in that sermon. So that's like the mission that Charlie gives to Elder Thomas. Everyone starts questioning him because he's never with his partner, and that's like a whole thing in the Mormon church that you're not supposed to be without your partner on the mission. And Elder Thomas just keeps saying, oh, Elder Johnson is sick, like he's sick, and that's why he's not around. And then him and Ellie are doing the scene where they're smoking weed, and he's like, I used to be addicted to smoking weed. And so that it isn't in the movie also. They took that out, which is interesting.
No, they did, where he talks about being addicted to smoking weed.
Oh, I guess they just took it out in the scene where he comes back. Because when he comes back in the play, when he has that whole scene with Charlie, he's like, I'm really high right now. So it's like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that last scene between him and Charlie, he comes and he's like, I'm really fucking high right now. And like is making a big deal about how high he is.
Oh, that would have been way better in the movie.
Yeah. And so anyway, so Ellie is like, I know you're not who you say you are. Like, this is not who you say you are. And Elder Thomas ends up revealing that he is not Elder Thomas. He got kicked off of his mission. He was doing a mission in Oregon, and he got kicked off his mission for beating up his mission partner. He was becoming disillusioned because he was really trying to help people, but no one was really interested in being saved or whatever, but he was still really trying to do good. And his mission partner couldn't have given less of a shit and was just kind of being a dick the whole time. And eventually he like explodes and beats the shit out of his mission partner, gets kicked off his mission, but doesn't want to go home. So he ends up in Idaho and like finds this name tag in the church and has been pretending to be Elder Thomas. He's actually Elder Paulson.
Okay.
And he eventually like tells them I think his name is Joseph. Mm-hmm. And he eventually like reveals like because that's the other thing is he like holds he's like, I can't tell you my first name. Like, I'm just Elder Thomas. And he eventually does reveal that his first, I think it's Joseph. He like reveals his first name.
Yeah, that's way better.
Yeah. And then in the scene with Charlie, he finds out what the sermon is. And the sermon is this whole thing about Jonah and the whale. And it's like he gives this whole sermon about Jonah and the whale, and then like his whole point is that like the whole story with Jonah and the whale is that Jonah was like refusing the call. He was refusing the call of God, and then God sends the whale to test Jonah. Mm-hmm. And so then it's like and I get kind of why they cut this because it is a little bit of a hat on a hat because we already have the Moby Dick metaphor going on. But I did like this metaphor in some ways that like Alan was refusing the call, and in some ways like the whale was Charlie, and like Alan was refusing the call, and he ends up choosing to like stay in this like carnal sin of being gay instead of like responding to God's call. But he's like, Charlie, you still have time, like you don't have to, like you can still. And so then it's the same thing from there, and like the rest of the scene pretty much plays out the exact same way. But I just think it's way more powerful to have given Elder Thomas this mission of like, I need you to find this sermon that like caused my partner to kill himself.
Yeah. And
then for like it's also like the thing that like that's the thing that like reinvigorates Elder Paulson at this point's belief in God. Is he's like, and the sermon was right. Like, he's like, and the sermon was right. And Charlie's like, oh, so you think he killed himself because of me? Like, because of me? And he's like, yes.
But that's like the context that scene needed.
Yes. So my whole experience of reading the play is I started reading the play. Also, this is important. I read the play when I was in high school because I was trying to find a scene to do for class. And so I didn't really read the play. I like read the scenes that Liz and Ellie were in with one other person. So I like skimmed the play in high school. And we were having a conversation recently with me, a couple other young actors, and AJ Diddy, host of Worst of All Possible Worlds, another podcast you should totally listen to.
It's so good.
It's so good.
How are we promoting them?
I don't, because we're reciprocal. They'll promo us now.
No,
AJ's also just my real life friend, and so I
It's just we have no clout, and it's like us being like, hey guys, you should listen to NPR.
We already did that. We did that with last podcast on the left.
Incredible.
So anyway, AJ was like, guys, that play is bad. Like, he's like, I love Samuel's work. I think Sam is a genius, but like, that play is like irredeemable. And I was like, okay, whatever. So then I went and read it again and I DM'd AJ and I was like, hey, you were so right. What I will say though, is that the experience I had watching the play, which was not reflected in watching the movie, is up until about the halfway point of the play, I was like, fuck this play, it's not good, I don't like it. And then as like the heat came on in the play and the like time started ticking down, I did feel something. That scene between Elder Thomas and Charlie is like genuinely very beautiful to me.
Yeah.
And like you also like the whole play, you're very like, Elder Thomas is kind of carrying the Dan capacity, and you do kind of genuinely believe he cares about Charlie and wants to help him and is sticking, and even in that scene you believe that he thinks he's trying to help him, but he is just so fucked up and misguided by Mormonism and needing to believe in something, because that's like his whole struggle, is that he like needs to believe in something, that like that scene is heartbreaking, and then that momentum carries you into this last scene with Ellie that like then makes that scene really heartbreaking. And so
how does the play end?
Same way, the exact same way.
Where he raptures into the sky?
Well, it goes, it's similar to Cabaret, the stage goes white.
Okay.
So it's very similar to the ending of Cabaret, where it's like ambiguous, like what that means.
Okay.
But so it's similar. It's very similar to the ending of the movie. But I don't know, because the back half, from the moment the mom walks on, what I always say about when you don't introduce a character until this late in the play, it needs to change the chemistry of the play. You should feel the air get sucked out of the room. And that, when the mom enters in the play, you feel the air get sucked out of the room. And from that moment to the end of the play, I actually really liked it and like kind of started to see the point that was cooking. Like I started to sort of get what was going on. I just don't like the front half of it. And the problem for me with the movie is I just never, that momentum didn't build in the movie for me the way that it built in the play.
Is the dynamic between Mary and Charlie pretty much the same in the play?
It's pretty much the same. But it's a little bit more, like, I think that because it's a much longer time since it happened, because it's like 8 years since she left him in the movie, and it's more like 14 in the play.
Yeah.
I think she's had more time to, like, make peace with it. And it's also just clear that, like, this arrangement is what worked best for them, and, like, was the way they decided to co-parent, was that she was going to raise him and he was going to provide for her. And I think there's a little bit more softness. Obviously, she still this is the other difference. She comes in with, like, big energy in the play. And I also think the drinking stuff is more clear in the play than it is in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that she's an alcoholic is to me clearer in the play than it is in the movie.
Yeah.
And, like, how bad her relationship with Ellie was clearer to me in the play than it was in the movie. Which is funny because I was reading the play, not even seeing it. But I think that, like, there's a softness to her relationship with Charlie that is missing to me a little bit in that scene in the movie.
That's the thing that I have an issue with sometimes with movies that portray exes, is I really hate when there are two characters who were in a relationship and it's completely unclear to me how they ever were in a relationship together.
Yeah.
Because they were married and had a child.
Is the line of the movie still in there that's like, I just can't remember now, that's like, you got what you wanted out of the marriage, you got a kid out of the marriage?
Yeah, she says something to the effect of, like, I know you only married me because you wanted a kid. And she was, and Charlie's reaction to that is like, no. But it's like, it's a no, but it's like, yeah, you're kind of right.
And then I think the thing that, like, for me, like, her, because I'm always thinking about, like, she's, like, only in this one scene, so, like, her arc is very truncated, but I think the arc for her almost in that scene is what she realizes is that, like, her revenge on Charlie was taking away the one thing he wanted from the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, like, what causes her to have some softness to him in the end. I'm projecting that on, like, the way that I would work with that actor if I was directing the play, perhaps. But, like, for me, that scene really, like, kicked us into the end of the play in a way that I didn't feel like that. There was no spark plug that, like, pushed, that I didn't feel like there was momentum in this movie in a way that, like, my, like, yuck about the play at first. Because the play has all the same problems that the movie has about, like, the fat phobia and the extra large chocolate bar and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it has even more because there's even more, like, weird, you're fat and disgusting towards Charlie from Liz. But, like, structurally, and this is because Samuel Hunter is a fantastic writer. I love The Case for the Existence of God. And I really liked his play about COVID, Grangeville, that was at Signature Theater last year, too, even though that one also had kind of a weird beginning. Anyway, I think he's a really good writer, and he knows how to structure a friggin' play. Mm-hmm. And, like, so he knows how to structure this play. I don't like the beginning of this play, but, like, by the end, I'm invested in these characters. And I never felt invested in these characters in the movie the way that I felt just reading them on the page.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think, to me, that really speaks to Aronofsky's failure as a director with The Whale, because these are all competent actors. I have some issues with the writing in the movie, but, like, ultimately it's just a failure to bring everything together.
The pieces don't come, and that's the thing too, is, like, I think the pieces really come together in the play. And I think that they put a friggin' hat on a hat by setting it during the 2016 presidential election, and, like, I don't care.
Right, like, that's what I'm so confused about, too, is that the original play is set in 2009, and then they update it to 2016, and allegedly this is because Samuel Hunter wanted to show the events as being before a major seismic change in the United States, and also because doing so would make it clear that the events were prior to COVID. And so, like, you have these scenes on TV where it's, like, the 2016 Republican Party primaries, and it's just like, what does that, like, do?
It feels so random.
You know what it's like, just because it's in the background doesn't make it a political statement.
You could have grounded it in 2009 in the exact same way by having something on the TV indicate it's 2009. But by it's just so hard, like, by evoking Donald Trump, like, then suddenly I'm sitting here being like, what is the political point of this movie? And it doesn't have one. It feels random and arbitrary in a way that's not useful to, like, the cohesion. And it's the same thing, like, they spend so much of the movie because he was trying to make it closer to his own experience by making it, like, an evangelical Christian religion instead of Mormonism. He was talking about that, like, he thinks he wrote it as Mormon to create some distance between himself and the material, and now he was ready to be close to it. And it's like, that distance is actually good. And also, you then spent the entire movie trying to jerry-rig this new religion instead of just grounding us in... Idaho's a super Mormon place. Like, grounding us in this small town in Idaho that's super Mormon. Like, ground us in the fact that, like, it just, like, that change... Those two changes were so unnecessary to me and ended up shooting the movie in the foot.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand, is I just don't get the articulation of why an evangelical apocalypse church, especially when Samuel Hunter was raised Episcopalian, like, because he's like, this is, like, closer to my lived experience, and I'm like, I really don't, that doesn't sound like that is actually.
So the other thing I also want to mention, because I think this is important. So he did an interview with South Coast Rep when they were doing a production of The Whale. I don't know what year this was in. Oh, 2013. So, right, this is like an early production of the show, like an early regional. And South Coast Rep is a great theater. So they asked him, what was the original inspiration for The Whale? I want you to read this. I'm going to send this to you, Aubrey. Because I think I already told you this, but maybe I didn't.
What was the original inspiration for The Whale? Well, I didn't start with the obesity. I was teaching expository writing at Rutgers, and I think this was 2009 when I was first writing the play, and I was just struggling in a very real way with trying to connect to these kids. This was very different than teaching a theater class. Here was a situation where I was paid to teach these kids how to write an essay, and I would say 98% of my students saw no value in essay writing and actually thought the class was a joke and just needed something to get through for the credit. I never had a teaching experience like that, and I found that I couldn't sit there and try to tell them why paragraph organization and topic sentences were important, because they're not. I mean, they're just not. They're unimportant to essay writing in the way that any piece of dramaturgy is unimportant to playwriting. They're just tools. So I sort of had to take a step back and really ask myself, what am I actually teaching them? And what I realized after the first few weeks is that I'm teaching these kids how to have an independent thought and how to express it clearly. And even more than that, I'm teaching them to have the confidence to have an independent thought and express it clearly. So all those teaching scenes in the play are sort of a weird emotional biography of what I was feeling when I was teaching this class. And the obesity came in because I felt like I was such a distance from these kids. It felt like I had 3 heads. And I wanted to create that distance not only between Charlie and the other characters on stage, but between Charlie and the audience, so that we had to break some of those barriers and come to accept him despite his appearance.
So there's that he kind of explains that, like, the obesity wasn't the core of the play for him. Which, after I read that, I was like, okay, so then why do it? Like, then this feels so auxiliary to, like, your point with the play. But then, obviously, that's, like, what it becomes about. Like, there's no way to write this play and not have it become about that. However, so our king did an interview later, when the movie was coming out, and he was talking about, let me send you this one as well, because this was very clarifying for me about why he wrote obesity into the play. I got it. Great. This is from a Vox interview around the Oscars at the time. I'm playing the interviewer and Aubrey is playing Samuel Hunter. I have my own history with religious fundamentalism and the way food issues can come along with them. That really hit me hard after watching the movie. Those two things can be tied up so tightly, especially with a body that isn't a straight male body.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything about you was always wrong.
I really had to come to terms with how I felt like so much of an outsider. This is partially self-imposed, but also real, that I felt isolated from the gay community as a 19-year-old in New York City because I was a big guy. So I was like, oh, I guess I don't belong here either. So even though writing that play felt really vulnerable and open at the time, I think having a second crack at it with the screenplay allowed me to go even further.
There was an article in the New York Times Magazine recently about how eating disorder patients who aren't visibly emaciated have a really hard time getting insurance to cover treatment and have difficulty getting admitted to treatment facilities. The main subject of the article comes from a very fundamentalist religious background, and when I saw that, I was like, yeah, of course. We are living in a world where we've pretended disorders correlate to body size, but they don't. You can be fat and have a disorder or not. You can be thin and have a disorder or not.
I was 21 years old and I was rapidly gaining weight and I was very depressed and I was not getting treatment in any way. I had the love of my parents. Shortly after that, I met my husband in 2005. I had these things in my life that allowed me to teach myself to not believe that I was a terrible person worthy of suffering, which is something I still struggle with. But I also knew I was lucky in a lot of ways.
2 other pull quotes I want to just read from this really fast that Samuel Hunter says that are kind of in regards to, like, the weight of it all in this movie. In response to a question about, like, changing it from Mormonism, he talks for a while, and at the end of the quote, he said, I had lost a bunch of weight in my early and mid-20s, but after the play was produced, I lost another 70 pounds over the course of 3 months. I hesitate to even bring that up because talking about numbers, everybody's body is their own. I'm really just talking about my own body. And then he also later, in another question, he said, but at the end of the day, I had to have faith that what I was doing with this was the diametric opposite of the way that obesity has traditionally been treated in film, which is to make them tertiary characters who are the butt of the joke, who are rendered as dullards and as lazy. And I was like, look, I've fundamentally written a guy who is incredibly vibrant, incredibly joyful, and is loving and deeply intelligent. I have not seen that rendered in cinema. I just haven't. I have to have faith of my own conviction at the end of the day while recognizing that everybody's reaction to this is a valid reaction. So
interesting that he describes Charlie as, like, vibrant and bright when he isn't that at all.
That's the thing that I think Samuel Hunter went into writing this play from a place of, like, I think we all know this, but, like, obviously there's stigma for fat people everywhere. There's a lot of stigma against fat people in gay male, especially white gay male communities, especially in New York City. It is very hard to be a fat gay man in New York City because of just the culture around that here. And so, like, obviously he had a lot of, like, trauma around that. He had a lot of religious trauma. I think he set out to write this play and this movie from an incredibly good and empathetic place. And I think he shot himself in the foot by making Charlie suicidal.
Yeah.
Like, if Charlie desperately wanted to live, but had hit a point, like, if this was a play about a man who desperately loves being alive, because he's, like, suicidal in the play, like, he wants to die, but it's like, if he has been like, fuck, like, I'm so far down this road, the congestive heart failure is so far along, I've been so embarrassed to go to the hospital because I didn't want anyone to see me like this, and now I'm paying for those consequences, I think I would, like, understand it a little bit more. But there's this cognitive dissonance for me about talking about Charlie as, like, joyful when the whole movie and the whole play we're seeing him be like, I'm sorry, and, like, apologizing for his existence.
Well, right. And then even in the movie, there's a scene with Mary where she's like, so what do you think of Ellie? And Charlie's like, she's amazing. And Mary's like, you and that optimism, it's so annoying. And it's just, I don't know. I think it just makes Charlie read as very dumb instead of like optimistic. Like he just reads as like, I am just a stupid person who thinks that my sociopath daughter is amazing.
Yeah, and it's like, it's why I really like all that stuff when he's like seeing the good in Ellie. And I don't know if this line was in the movie, I can't remember, but in the play, like Liz has the line that's like, you were always the perpetual or no, it's Mary. She's like, you were always the perpetual optimist. And it's just like that, if we would have seen that in Charlie in the first half of the movie, and it's a way for people to play too, like when we finally get the sense that like Charlie is a guy who loves life, I don't know, like if we saw some like fight in Charlie in the movie and in the play, I feel like I would get Hunter's point there, but I feel like they spend so much of the movie and so much of the play making him pathetic that it's like, I don't see that. I don't see that. I see you falling into the same traps that, I will say, a more sensitive way than like shallow Hal for sure. But I still think it's still falling into the same kind of like garbage idea that like to be fat is to suck so bad that you want to kill yourself. Like I don't see what he's seeing in this. But I also appreciate that he's like hedging and he's like, I know not everyone feels that way about this character. I have to stand by what I think I've done, but like anyone's reaction to this is valid. I do really respect him saying that.
Yeah, because I viewed Charlie's character throughout this as someone who was engaging in that sort of passive self-harm.
Yes.
Like not actively trying to kill himself, but it's like people who like, I just don't wear a seatbelt when I'm driving because I just, whatever happens could happen. Yeah. And that's still passively self-harming. And I viewed Charlie as much the same way, where it's like, he's not actively trying to end his life, but he's doing things that he knows are not conducive to him continuing to be alive. So that's why it's so jarring to me that it's like, he's joyful and vibrant because he's not. Like, fat, like, there are fat people who have very large bodies who are joyful and vibrant, and even if they don't have full mobility, the way that they are engaging with the world is not how Charlie engages with the world.
I think for me what ultimately comes down to is I'm missing a clear arc for Charlie. Mm-hmm. And whatever. I'm so annoying. I'm the most annoying fucking dramaturgy annoying theater person in the world. But I'm missing, like, I don't know what Charlie's journey in this play is. Or in this movie. Like, I don't know, like, how he changes from the beginning to the end. And the thing that I like about the plot where, like, he really wants to know what was in this sermon before he dies, like, I think that like, helps give his character some structure in the play. And that's completely missing from the movie, obviously. And I just wish that we had seen someone who, like, really wanted to live, has accepted the fact that he is going to die, and then, like, but he needs this one last thing before he dies. But then that gets so confused by the daughter plot and, like, all these other things. And it's like, I just am missing the one thing that is driving Charlie in this play. And that's the really hard part about writing, like, a passive character, especially as your protagonist, is it's like, I don't know what Charlie wants in this play, and I need to know what your protagonist wants.
Well, and that's the thing. It's trying to write it to be ambiguous, where even the ending is supposed to be like, maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't. And it's just like, so what does that also what does that do for us if he's not dead at the end? Like, how do we even read that?
Well, I think we're playing in the idea that, like, some people might find it hopeful to believe that he could live and he could walk and have this relationship with his daughter, versus some people will believe that, will kind of buy into this whole, like, death will free him thing. And I just don't know. I don't know that I agree with that. But yeah, I think for me, it's just like, if the thing that he wanted the whole play was to hear Ellie read this essay, why didn't he just ask her to do it sooner? Like, I am missing, I hate to be an Aristotle bitch, but I'm missing his recognition and reversal, and I don't understand what he wants throughout the entire play. And that is really hard for me to not understand what the main character of a play wants.
Well, that's where I think the movie really lets itself down by cutting out that plot point of wanting to know what the sermon was that triggered Alan's suicide.
Yeah.
Because that immediately gives something for Charlie to want that motivates his character, whereas in the movie, he's just a fucking sad sack of shit who's just there. Like, he's just there.
Well, that's why I also, like, I think for me, I track the relationship between Charlie and Elder Thomas so much more than I track the relationship with Charlie and Ellie, because the inciting incident of the play, to me, is when Elder Thomas, it's the first scene, but it's when Elder Thomas enters and is like, I really want to help you, because then gives Charlie something active to do throughout the play, which is he needs to know what happened. He needs this closure. Like, it activates him. And I don't know what is activating Charlie in the movie. And it's the same problem with the play, because it tries to make the relationship with the daughter central. But I don't know what's driving Charlie. And it's more clear in the play than it is in the movie. And it's just not in the movie at all.
Yeah.
Also, we talked to Aubrey about this yesterday, but Corey Michael Smith, who played Chevy Chase in the recent Saturday Night Live biopic, played Elder Thomas both in its world premiere in Colorado and when it was at Playwrights Horizons, and he's so sexy.
He's so sexy. He's such a good actor.
He's such a good actor, and he's so sexy. And he's, like, soft but hard. Like, there's a reason he's good at playing Chevy Chase. Like, he is, like, has this sort of, like, nefariousness of, like, someone who's, like, trying to do good and trying to be helpful, but ultimately does, like, real homophobic harm. And so, like, I just think he's such good casting in that part.
Go, white boy, go. Go, white boy, go.
Also, he's queer. Happy Pride. We're definitely not posting this in June, but happy Pride.
One thing that I made a note of is that Darren Aronofsky tried to get the film made for over a decade, and one of the reasons why he struggled to do so was because he didn't think he could find the right actor to portray Charlie. And after he saw Brendan Fraser's performance in a trailer for I think it's a Brazilian movie. It's one of Brendan Fraser's flop movies called A Journey to the End of Night in 2006. He decided that Fraser would be a good choice. I haven't watched the trailer, but I have it right here. So I'm going to send it to you and we're going to watch it. And I guess I want to know if you think that he has the sauce.
I feel like I'm just going to be so clouded by the fact that I think Brendan Fraser's a good actor.
Truth shall set us free.
Hey, so what?
So
what?
Allegedly, Darren Aronofsky saw that trailer and then went, "This is the guy I need for The Whale." Can you just summarize the trailer?
No, I can't. I don't know what happened in that trailer. They are looking for a drug mule who speaks a very specific African language. I think Yoruba. And then there's a lot of sounds.
Yeah.
That's what I took away from that, is they were and he's a dishwasher?
Yeah, so allegedly Darren Aronofsky sees this trailer for this random flop movie from 2006 and is like, this is the guy I need for The Whale, which is crazy because Brendan Fraser in that trailer is just like, when are we gonna do the drop? Like, there's no real range in that. So I feel like, I don't know. I think Darren Aronofsky might have been contractually obligated to say that that movie exists. Because I don't understand why that would make him want to cast Brendan Fraser.
I don't know. I don't pretend to understand how Darren Aronofsky thinks. Do you know the other thing that's true about who was almost in The Whale?
That's just what I was about to say.
Okay, good.
At one point, The Whale was set to star James Corden with Tom Ford directing.
Mm-hmm. I think Tom Ford wouldn't be a bad director. Like, you know, I think if this movie had like a Single Man or a Nocturnal Animals vibe, like it wouldn't be bad. The James Corden of it all is deeply, deeply obscene to me.
I think The Whale starring James Corden, directed by Tom Ford, would have been absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But it would have been exponentially more entertaining than what we got.
I think this movie needed a different director, and I get that it was a passion project for Aronofsky, but I don't get why it was a passion project for him. I get why it's a passion project for Hunter, and I wish...
You know why? It's because Darren Aronofsky has fat kid energy. Darren Aronofsky was a fat kid.
I don't care.
I know, but he thinks he was cooking with this. Because he was like, this could have been me. It wouldn't have been you, Darren.
Now he's doing a movie with The Rock.
Great. George Clooney also briefly considered directing this film, which I actually think probably would have been okay. George Clooney is like the okayest director.
Let me send you something crazy.
Okay.
This isn't Zoom chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, I have this quote in my notes. Yeah, he said the criticisms make no sense. Actors have been using makeup since the beginning of acting. That's one of their tools. And the lengths we went to portray the realism of makeup, the realism of the makeup has never been done before. People with obesity are generally written as bad guys or punchlines, and we wanted to create a fully worked out character who has bad parts about him and good parts about him. He said of fat people that they get judged everywhere they go on the planet by most people. This film shows that, like everyone, we are all human. Amazing.
I think this movie and this play were made with good intentions. I just think, unfortunately, by doing the weird horror movie eating sounds and like making him like suicidal, it like leans into like, it's just like, yeah, sure.
Brendan Fraser worked with the Obesity Action Coalition, which I've never heard of. I'm assuming he met with them to like talk about how to make his portrayal not deeply offensive. And he also worked with a dance instructor before filming to think about how his character would move with the excess weight. And like, that tells me that Brendan Fraser was thoughtful in his portrayal, which I appreciate. Like I really do think that Brendan Fraser is a victim in all of this. Like I really think that he was really thoughtful about this portrayal. I think that he did his best with the material that he was given to play a deeply sympathetic character. Ultimately, where I land is that I think this character is like so deeply sympathetic, he just becomes pathetic.
That's the problem.
That is problematic.
That's the problem. It's like it's the good doctor problem.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like when you go so far to like make someone sympathetic, you just make them like a caricature of the thing in a new different way. But it's just like this, if the movie would have had anything of like times in Charlie's life when it was good. We also like established the fact that he was fat before he became as fat as he is in the movie. And it's like, I would have liked to like see that. Like, I don't know. There's just so many things that like, I think the benefit of taking something from a play to a movie is you can show a lot more in a movie than you can in a play inherently. Mm-hmm. And this movie just like kept it in the single unit set, which like helps with the claustrophobic feeling, but also it doesn't because they go outside and it's like, I just wish that they would have like maybe given us a little bit more context into who Charlie was before this last week of his life. If the goal was to show this, like, again, it's the thing about like how I think if the ending of the movie was drawn as two deeply harmed people seeing the parts inside of each other that are good, maybe it could have worked, but...
Right, but that's not the movie we got.
No, I know.
So that's why it just feels almost like revisionist to be like, this is what the movie's about. It's like, well, but that's not the story you told.
Yeah, I think that's what the movie wants to be about.
Yeah. And I think potentially it could be with different direction.
I think it's direction and it needed to not take out the Mormonism thing. I don't know why they did that, and I'm a broken record here, but like, I think if someone had worked with Samuel on this to like, when I work with writers, I'll often ask like, what is the hot core burning at the center of this play for you? And if the hot core burning from the center of this play is that like, Charlie is this like deeply empathetic, cool, vibrant, fun person who is being judged unfairly and feeling alienated from everyone else because of the way that he looks, I think there's a way to do that and to then like ask that central question of like, and how did that alienation affect him? And if we could like see that over, instead of doing this like 5-day compressed thing, if we could see that change over time, to see Charlie go from this person to like watching this stigma eat away at him, I think maybe we could have come to something about the way, and like, if the point of the movie is the alienation, if the point of the movie is that other people are shitty to Charlie, I feel like I need to see more of the before and not just the now.
I was also talking about this episode with my other brilliant playwright friend, Jess Hanovich, and she was saying that she saw the production at Playwrights Horizons, and that in Shuler Hensley's bio, who played Charlie and won an Obie Award for it, he talks about how he like mostly plays monsters, and that her sort of takeaway was that if the point of it is the alienation that he feels from the world and like sort of being ashamed about his appearance and all of this stuff, like, why not make it a sci-fi or just like magical thing? Like we talked about, like, what if he had 100 fingers? or something like that, because then it wouldn't be attached to like real people's real experience, but you could still understand the alienation of appearance. And I think that gets into like that. I think the movie also movie/play at times also wants to be about eating disorders, but doesn't quite hit the mark on that. Going back to what I said about like us not seeing the before and just living in the after. And like obviously also part of where the eating disorder is coming from is from grief. So this movie/play is also about grief and like what grief does to a person. And there are so many examples of using like fantasy, magical realism, sci-fi things to represent the manifestation of grief on stage. All to say that like I think you can still do like something that Charlie has done to himself or something that is happening to his body because of the grief, but like you can represent that grief without it being an eating disorder and without it then obviously making a commentary on real people's real bodies. Anyway, just something I was mulling over after having this conversation with Jess about like why obesity as opposed to anything else, you know?
Yeah. We'll kind of close out by talking more about, I think, some broader fat suit stuff, but there's a really great quote from a review by Katie Reif of Polygon that I think sums up a lot of the points that we are trying to make. So I'm going to send it to Mackenna and have Mackenna read it.
I'm Mackenna. If you look at the whale as a fable, its moral is that it's the responsibility of the abused to love and forgive their abusers. The movie thinks it's saying, you don't understand, he's fat because he's suffering, but it ends up saying, you don't understand, we have to be cruel to fat people because we are suffering. Aronofsky and Hunter's biblical metaphor aside, fat people didn't volunteer to serve as repositories for society's rage and contempt.
Yeah. She cooked there.
She did, and that's what I think I'm saying too, is like if Aronofsky and Hunter, and I think somewhere in Hunter, because listening to Hunter talk about this, I do think this is Hunter's point, is that like because we are all full of rage and contempt, we treat fat people like this.
Yeah.
But that's not fair. And if we watched any of the thin characters in this movie realize it at the end, if we watch them have a fucking recognition and reversal where they change their mind, I would get that, but we don't. Like, they just kind of think they're right the whole time.
And like also obviously a huge theme in this movie/play is also guilt, but we mostly get it from Charlie and a little bit represented by Liz's enabling.
Exactly. Like even Ellie at the end, like when she's upset, it's still there's still no reversal. Yeah.
It's like why I almost think it would have been nice to see it in some ways happen with Elder Thomas instead of with the daughter. Because like for her, her feelings with Charlie are all complicated by the fact that she's her dad. Whereas like having someone who is basically a stranger, like have this recognition that he has been cruel to this person. Like I don't really see Ellie like understanding that she was I don't see anyone understanding that they were cruel to Charlie in this movie. And I need them to, I think.
Yeah. Oh, before we move on, I should also point out, like, Brendan Fraser is a heterosexual man and is playing a gay man in this movie. You know, I think that it's important to note that there are queer fat actors who could have portrayed this character. I think Brendan Fraser does his best with the role that he was given, and I don't judge him personally for taking this role. However, I do think that when we think about things like casting, and I guess this is a good transition into my last point, which really is just this idea that, like, why do we even need to use fat suits in media in general? In a movie like The Whale, right, I think that there's a reasonable point that can be made about there not being a wealth of 600-pound actors who are able to portray these characters. But, like, why not cast someone who is already fat, who is already queer, because they exist?
Yeah, well, that was the point that the guy from Mean Girls made, the actor who played Damien in Mean Girls. He was like, he talked about the movie and he was like, I love Brendan Fraser, so I'm conflicted in saying this, but like, why go up there and wear a fat suit to play a 400-pound queer man? And he said that like him and the other big queer guys are often overlooked, and that actors like him would have jumped at the chance to star in a movie like this. And so it does to me feel a little odd that this was the casting choice made, but I think it was part of like the Renaissance thing.
Yeah. The quote from Daniel, is it Franzese? Mm-hmm. The guy who played Damien, he says, to finally have a chance to be in a prestige film that might be award nominated, where stories about people who look like us are being told, that's the dream. So when they go time and time again and cast someone like Brendan Fraser, me and the other big queer guys were like, we can't take it. And yeah, I mean, I do think that this leads to this question of, are things shifting? And I do think that in my lifetime, I have seen more real fat people be cast in roles that portray human fat people. Yeah. So like 2 examples of this are Chrissy Metz in the show This Is Us, and then Adie Bryant in her show Shrill. But then you also have recent examples like Sarah Paulson wearing a fat suit for American Crime Story to portray Linda Tripp, the woman who recorded conversations with Monica Lewinsky that were pivotal in the President Bill Clinton sex scandal. Sarah Paulson, to her credit, did express some regrets about taking up space in a role that could have been cast to a fat actor. Her quote was, "It's very hard for me to talk about this without feeling like I'm making excuses. There's a lot of controversy around actors in fat suits, and I think that controversy is a legitimate one. I think fat phobia is real. I think pretending otherwise causes further harm." So it's like we have Sarah Paulson admitting that she wore a fat suit and that she thinks it's problematic, but she still did. Yeah. But she also still later kind of insists that actors can bring something beyond their physical self to a role, which like I also think is kind of true, but I think that the waters are so muddied when it's like, I don't know, a thin, conventionally attractive actor portraying a character who is not, to all of this mass applause when actors who just like look like that are passed up for those roles.
Right, and it's like then you're sort of reinforcing the whole fucking prop. Like that's the whole thing, is it's like the fact that they didn't look at a single actually, and like it was a thin guy when it was at Playwrights Horizons too. It's like they aren't actually looking at any of these. They are also overlooking these people. They're overlooking fat queer actors, and so it's like you're making this point that like we stigmatize these folks. I got up. I'm heated. But yeah. It's like, so if you're trying to make this point that like these people are getting overlooked and like stigmatized by society, and then you aren't looking at them, it's like you also aren't witnessing them. You also aren't witnessing their pain. You're choosing to ignore it to have a fancy actor in your movie, and it's just like that's so boring to me. It's like just look, if your whole thing is we need to like look at and witness these people and view them as full real human beings, you need to do that.
And so I think sort of panning back and thinking about fat suits in media, I think what we're seeing is a transition from fat suits used as comedy to fat suits used as like a dramatic purpose, and there's a lot of justification around it on the basis of like, well, this performance is so well done. Look at how this actor is transformed into this role. And I just still don't think that excuses fat suits existing or fat suits being used in this way. I mean, I said in the first episode, like, I can think of like a very specific type of narrative where a character would have to have a fat suit on, but outside of that, I just don't see the justification.
No, I know. I think it's just like, you know, for this movie, you know, if you want to cast someone like Daniel Franzese, who's like definitely not 600 pounds, like maybe that's where you like use it, but it's like he still is going to understand the experience of being a fat queer man better than Brendan Fraser is.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And then I think some people make the argument of like, oh, so you're saying only gay actors can only play gay characters? And it's like, no, like, I think that when identity is central to a character's existence and their story, right? Like in a plot relevant way is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a lot of sense to cast an actor who has that experience.
Yeah, I think that like it's tricky with queerness in particular because like you don't want people to have to out themselves. This happened with Kit Harington where he was like forced to out himself because of Heartbreakers or Heartstopper. Is that what that called? It's called Heartstopper. I'm too old for that show. But Kit Harington was forced to out himself because of that show, and I think Lucas Gage also was forced to out himself. And it's like, that's not cool and that's not fair. And so like, who knows? Maybe Brendan Fraser like is a little bisexual. Who knows? But like,
but it's Hollywood, baby.
It is like, I think it can be then frustrating for folks who are out to be like, damn, like this is my lived experience and like it feels like other people are taking the flowers from me.
Oh, also, I forgot to mention, as Brendan Fraser, Autistic King.
Oh, yes.
Confirmed. I know that was a completely irrelevant time to put that in.
Wait, is that true or is his son autistic?
I thought Brendan Fraser, I swear I read him saying he was autistic. I could have fucked up everybody.
No, his son is.
Oh, okay. Well,
his son is autistic.
ally to the autistics. That's fine. We love our ally, our queer ally, our autistic ally, Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Mackenna, you're a thin person. I have different experiences watching fat suits in media throughout my life as, I don't know, it's always been so much closer to a depiction of me or a reflection of how other people see me or a fear of what I could become when it's portrayed as something terrifying. What has been your feeling on fat suits?
To be so for real, I just didn't really think about them growing up. I was sort of like, whatever. And then like, and I think this is true for me for so many things. Is when I was younger, I was like, whatever, I don't care. And as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more aware, especially of like how that can be harmful in media. It's important, like it was important for me to have a moment, this is so stupid, but I was watching Wonder Woman and I was like, oh, this is the first time like a movie this size led by a woman like has been this cool. And I remember crying, and it was like a moment for me and being like, oh, this is like why representation is so important. And I think it helped me reflect back on like, and I had done this before this moment, because this is gonna make it sound like I didn't like learn empathy for other people until I was 19. But I think that like what that moment really like cemented for me was that like the things that we put on screen matter deeply, and even more so than like negative depictions of things matter, positive depictions of things really matter. And so I think before that I had obviously become very like, actors doing brownface is bad, and like actors playing, you know, trans characters when they're cis is bad. And I think for me, like after that moment, I was like, oh, we actually need more positive representation of all of these things. Like it's not enough to just like say no more fat suits. It's not enough to like obviously stop doing brownface. Like it's not enough to do any of these things when it comes to representative groups. It needs to be more than that. It needs to be, we also need to have positive representation of those groups. And I think the thing that sucks so bad about The Whale is it was trying to be positive representation, and it, to me, failed.
But you know what would be positive representation is if someone produced my one-woman show.
You don't have a one-woman show.
Not yet. Cue the end credits.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.